I sent you this video because you have a home to sell and you're trying to buy a house. And I want to talk to you about the process. I want to talk to you about what some of your options are and kind of give you some guidance. This is a complicated situation, but there are some great options for you. It's not going to be impossible, but there are risks involved with the different options that you take. And my goal is to educate you on what the best strategies are and then help you work through the thought process around the different options so you can make good decisions. So first, let me say this. You are going to sell your house at some point, and somebody could potentially put an offer in on your house that has a home to sell. And I want you to be able to put that hat on as you're thinking about this so that you can then think about what the seller might be thinking on the house you're trying to buy when you're contingent. So here's some options. The first option is that you buy a house without having your house sold, and that makes you something called contingent. It means that you're going to buy their house contingent upon your house selling. Now, you might be at various stages through this process. I've had people before who say they don't want to be homeless, so what they want to do is find a house, put a contract on it, and then put your house on the market. Again, take that hat off, put the other hat on. Imagine you're selling your house and the person trying to buy it doesn't have their house on the market yet. You have to think about this through a risk analysis. The risk is, what if you don't put your house on the market? If you're under contract, there's only so much you can do. You can write in the contract you'll have your house on the market in so many days. But what if you overprice your listing? What if the buyers who buy your house go through a home inspection and the deal falls apart? Currently, as of July 2025, you can look this up, 30% of contracts are falling apart. Could be for a number of reasons, but there's a risk factor involved in that. You could also put your house under contract. Like you put your house on the market, you put your house under contract, and then you go put a contingent offer on another house contingent upon you going to settlement, assuming you're using the proceeds of the sale of your house to purchase the next house. That's the contingent offer situation. Now, another way to do this would be for you to put your house on the market, find a buyer, and then put a contingency in the agreement that says you have the ability to find a house. And if you don't find a house, you don't have to go through with the deal. It's called a home of choice contingency. So this would be where instead of you finding a house first, you put your house on the market first, but you don't have to sell it if you can't find another house. The risk is always, well, what if I don't find another house? Because there's like risks on both sides. If you sell your house without finding one, you can be homeless. But if you try to buy somebody else's house without your house being on the market, the chances of you pulling that off are very low. So those are two options. Well, three, because you can do the home of choice contingency. Now let's talk about you selling your house with two other options. One is you do an extended contract. Like you put your house on the market, but you agree to a 90-day settlement. In that situation, you have, 2.5 months to find a house to buy. The risk is if you can't find one in 2.5 months, then you're in a tough situation. Another option is you can put your house on the market, put it under contract with the agreement that you have a rent back. So you could, for instance, go under contract with a 30-day settlement with a 60-day rent back. And you can even qualify that to say up to 60 days, depending on how much of that time you need. So after settlement, you have all the cash from the sale of your house in your bank account, which allows you to go non-contingent, and you have 60 days. Another option is something called a bridge loan. This would be for people that have really good debt to income ratios where they could finance one loan that'll cover two houses. They try to make it easy on you by doing a low interest or a no interest loan. And then you basically would be able to purchase a house without having to sell yours. And you continue to make those payments until your house sells, and then it kind of rolls into one. That's called a bridge loan. Now, the last option is something my lender offers. It's called Buy Now, Sell Later Express. Now, I'm not a lender. I don't play one on TV. The terms are subject to change. You have to get approval, all that legal stuff, right? The way this program works is assuming that the home that you own has at least 20% equity, meaning if it's a $500,000 house, your mortgage would be $400,000 or less. You have to go through an approval process, and what they will give you is a home equity loan that you can then buy a house in cash. They'll give you a loan for the cash. You can be a cash offer on a house, and then you have up to 6 months to sell your house. This is probably the best option because you got to go through the process and talk to the lender and ask all the questions, but there's really only a $1,200 fee associated with it. And it gives you 6 months to sell your house. What that does is gives you the freedom and the cushion to not be squeezed. Because when you do a contingency, you're either squeezed to buy a house, maybe at terms you wouldn't agree to, or you've purchased a house with a contingency and now you have to accept an offer on your house that you might not love because you have a squeeze. Like maybe you only have 2 weeks left and this is the only buyer and they want, $20,000 off for the asking price, or they want you to fix all the windows that have broken seals in your house for $20,000, and you feel like if you don't do it, they're going to walk away. You have the pressure on both sides. This will kind of relieve all the pressure, and you can be a cash offer on the purchase with up to 6 months to sell your property, and then it rolls into one loan. You have to talk to the lender to go over the terms, but those are your options. Now, the last thing I want to say is my advice is as you go through this process, understand that if everything goes perfect, it's going to be stressful for most people. Most people say they would rather spend 10 weekends in jail than sell their house to move, right? But to buy a house and sell a house at the same time adds layers and layers of complication. What I would suggest is to look through what your options are and come up with a written plan of what you would call Plan A. This is if everything goes perfect, this is what we do. We do this, then we do this. And then I would come up with if that doesn't work, a Plan B. Then if that doesn't work, we do a Plan C. And then you basically are able to go through the process having already thought through, talk to me, talk to your lender, talk to your financial advisor, learn what all the risks are and what if this and what if this, and sort of work through all that in your mind, come up with a written plan for how to go through this process so that when you're faced with some of the speed bumps or curveballs that are going to come through, you've already thought through, okay, well, we already thought this through and here's what we're going to do. We're going to move on to Plan B, which is XYZ. And the last thing that I would say is when it comes to selling your house, just kind of plugging myself here, if I'm going to be the person selling your house, one of the things that I offer is I offer an upfront, paid for by me, pre-appraisal. And that'll give you a very accurate measurement of what your house is likely worth. And it'll be, we'll discuss, it won't necessarily sell at that exact number, but that'll be a very accurate measurement. And then I do a pre-home inspection, which also gives you an accurate measurement of any money that you might have to spend for repairs during this process. It's better to come up with sort of identify the issues up front. The other thing I do is I pay for an interior decorator to come over your house to tell you how to get your house positioned well to attract the highest offer. I like to think of it as, between this process and the home sale process, flipping all your cards over, playing a card game where you flip all the cards over and you know what they are, and then you can play your hand instead of waiting until this to put your house on the market or waiting until this to find out, what your home is worth or what comes up during the home inspection. God forbid you've bought a house, you've paid for a home inspection, you've negotiated all the repairs, and then you get a buyer on your house and then goes through a home inspection and finds out you have mold in your attic. And now they want ServPro to come in and rip all your insulation out. And, maybe it doesn't need to be that invasive and you don't have any control at that point. They can then walk away from the deal if you don't agree to their terms. This is a way to sort of, as best we possibly can, think through all the likely outcomes. The other thing that will do is give you much more of a clear picture on what your final numbers are going to be. What are you likely to sell your house for? You'll know what your walk away money is, what your down payment is going to be, what your closing costs are going to be, and exactly how much is going to come out of all these different sales and down payments and closing costs. And you'll know what you need to do, what the benchmarks are, and then you can plan accordingly. That'll help you plan out your plan A. Well, if I sell my house in 30 days and I get the full price offer, we're going to be able to put this much down and the payment will be this, and I'll have this much money to pay off my car, whatever it is. But then if I don't, then we have a plan B, and then we go to this other program or whatever it is, or we do a home of choice contingency and work through it. Because in 2021, people were able to sell their house in 48 hours. Things were easy. Everybody was happy at the settlement table. 2025, when I'm recording this video, things are much more complicated. Sellers are having a harder time because a lot of times they're having a house to buy and they're sort of frustrated with today's interest rates. And like I said in the beginning of this video, 30% of deals are falling apart. So you really want to be strategic about this. You want to think it through. You want to work with a professional who knows what they're doing. And you want to make sure you can mitigate as much of the risk as possible to give your best chance of success. At the end of the day, your goal here is to be able to purchase out of all the houses that are going to be on the market that you want to buy. You want to make sure you get the best one at the best price, and that you sell your house for the most money to make sure you come out on top of this often complicated process. So I did my best to summarize those options. The best thing that we could probably do is to sit down in person and have me be able to ask you some specific questions and then give you a lot of answers so that you can make good decisions. One thing that I would definitely recommend is sit down with people, ask questions, know what you're doing ahead of time in order to be strategic to go through this process. So thanks for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day.